Saudi like that, Riyadh. Toon free to sign Pro League stars. How surprised were you that the proposed ban didn't go through?
Yeah, in terms of surprise, I'm surprised because it's a move against what I think would be quite a sensible measure put in place. I think we can all see we can all see the obvious around this and the benefits when you have pooled resources, if you like. But then I'm not surprised that this sort of outcome has been reached. For me, it had a slight sort of turkeys voting on Christmas kind of feel to it. And clearly, when we talk about this scenario, we're looking at Newcastle. We're looking at the fact that they've been wanting to sign Ruben Neves. Obviously, these discussions, this vote, it's not something that's targeted at Newcastle per se, but that's the obvious situation that's arisen here. They would now, for argument's sake, be free to look at signing loan players from the other PIF-owned clubs, so Al Hilal, Al Nassr, Al Ittihad, Al Ahly. So, they suddenly have this access to a pool of players that they'd be able to call on. This is purely hypothetical, of course, but you'd be looking at people like Benzema, Kante, Firmino, Mitrovic. So, these would be guys who would perhaps fall under the same umbrella ownership. Now, is that problematic? I tend to think it is. I can see why this measure was explored. But going to your question about being surprised, no. It's by all accounts, it sounds like it's been shot down by 8 clubs. They couldn't get the 14 club majority that they needed to be able to pass this rule through. But again, we can see why that would be. Premier League clubs, there would be a certain degree of self-interest involved in that, which I'm sure would be no great revelation to anyone that's the way that it works in these kinds of discussions. But as for the rule as it's going to be, that this ban not coming through, I don't think that's a terribly good thing.
Well, could be 12 clubs associated ownership, Charlie, in the Premier League, couldn't there, if Jim Ratcliffe's buy into Manchester United goes ahead? But it seems like Newcastle and very much Ruben Neves the centre of attention, despite all the stars potentially from Saudi Newcastle could sign, as Riyadh mentions. Metro says boost for Newcastle as rivals fail to outlaw Saudi loan deals. So it could be Benzema and Ronaldo up front for Newcastle. But do you think Ruben Neves is more likely?
Well, I mean, Newcastle are insisting that isn't the case, but equally, I think it's a long-term thing, isn't it? And, even if they don't sign Neves in January, obviously they're looking for a replacement for Tonali, who's serving his ban. And as Riyadh said, Fabinho is one of those players that could join Newcastle. But equally, over the next year, 2 years, these Saudi clubs are only going to get stronger, aren't they? And having, an even, better portfolio of players that Newcastle could pick from the 4 teams that are owned by the Public Investment Fund. But I think it's a surprise. I think the Premier League expected 14 clubs to vote in favour, as it was. It was eight clubs that weren't up for it. It was Newcastle, Sheffield United, Man City, Chelsea, Everton, Wolves, Forest, and Burnley. Sheffield United, I think, have surprised and angered some of the clubs. They're Saudi owned. I think there's some very angry other Premier League football teams tonight that feel really let down by some of the other clubs. And as I said, the Premier League are a bit surprised about this. It's not a great day for football. I think it was a good idea, and it's only going to make the rich even stronger, I think.
Well, the list that you mentioned there, Charlie, is repeated on the Telegraph Sports Supplement we saw moments ago as well. Riyadh, with those 8 clubs, why would clubs like Wolverhampton Wanderers, Burnley, Manchester City and Sheffield United be doing this then? We can see the case for Newcastle. Is this because of what they're planning in the future more than the here and now?
That would be possible. I'd be speculating if I went too far down that road. But I think, again, like sort of Charlie's mentioning there, this isn't a decision that's been necessarily reached by these clubs with today in mind. And Newcastle is, again, that's the club that we get drawn to when we have this discussion, because the possibilities become so enormous for them. what's going on over in Saudi Arabia, that's only going to grow. It's already grown exponentially in the past year or so, or less, since Cristiano Ronaldo's gone over there. That's going to develop that body of players that a club would be able to call upon it's already vast. We're talking about a changing profile of player. It started with aging stars, if you prefer. Ruben Neves was he's at the center of this conversation that we're having, but he was one of those mold breakers, as you were. He's not a guy who's gone over there in his mid-30s. So, we are going to be seeing these scenarios increasingly. And to sort of play back to what we've both just said, I can't see how this would be a good thing in terms of the league, in terms of the integrity of the competition and what resources different clubs have access to. We know it's an uneven playing field when we talk about the finances of football, but this is another level on again, and it encompasses those broader conversations that we have, perhaps around financial fair play, around what you have access to, what you're able to, what rabbit you're able to pull out the hat in a given moment. And in that Newcastle case, we've been talking about Tonali, how they can cater for that. If they're suddenly able to dip into this extra market, then that would have to be perceived as an advantage.